Session this evening is supporting the social emotional development of students. Guest speakers this evening include Amber Chandler, and she's a National Board Certified ELA teacher. She was the recipient of the 2018 AMLE Educator of the Year Award. She's an author as well as a blogger. She was awarded the Novo Foundation's SEL in Action Grant for 2 years. In addition, she is a member of the AMLE Board of Trustees and is a middle school teacher in the Frontier Central School District in New York. So Amber, we're so happy to have you with us this evening. Our second guest panelist is Dr. Judy Brew, who is an internationally known middle-level education consultant and the recipient of AMLE's John Lounsbury Award. Judy has been a leader in education, not only in Pennsylvania, Gettysburg College, as a consultant throughout the state, but also with AMLE. Judy, as always, it's great to have you with us.
It's great to be here, thanks.
Devin Layton is currently the assistant principal at Springton Lake Middle School in Media, PA. She's in charge of developing their SEL curriculum. She has 17 years of experience at the middle level as both a counselor and assistant principal. She's worked in affluent as well as both middle and lower income settings and has supported students at the collegiate level with academic and mental health advising for the past 12 years. And Devin, it's just terrific to have you with us this evening. In addition, our moderator this evening will be Gail Heinemeyer. Gail has done extensive work with AMLE and of course was the principal of Ridley Middle School. So Gail, we're going to turn it right over to you and welcome everyone.
All right, thank you, Paul. Among other things, I want to encourage folks that if you have a question that comes up in the course of the webinar, please enter it in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that and hopefully be able to respond to your questions in the course of our presentation. One thing that we wanted to show is what are the objectives for our session and how they tie into the foundational paper of AMLE, which is This We Believe. So we want to talk a little bit about the connection between SEL and This We Believe. We'll talk a little bit about the beliefs that the founders of the middle level education movement had, and particularly with their concerns about social emotional learning. Why is it important? Share with you a few strategies and also offer some resources. This We Believe is the foundation paper for the National Middle School Association, now known as the Association for Middle Level Education. The first edition came out in 1982. The next edition will be out literally momentarily. It is hot off the presses and ready to be available for folks very shortly. One of the things that we feel about an education for young adolescents is that it has to be responsive, challenging, exploratory, empowering, equitable, and engaging. So if you think of those attributes and keep those in mind, actually not only with just SEL, but literally everything that you're doing when you're talking about how you are providing things for your adolescents in your middle schools.
Gail, just sorry, the slides aren't coming up. Can you make sure that you've got the slides moving? We're still on the first one.
Okay, now this is where it's a problem because it's moving for me. I wonder if it's just slow.
Yeah, no, I think, Gail, maybe if you just reshare the screen, I think if you click on stop sharing, I think you might be sharing a different screen. So when you click share, make sure you're choosing that window and then click present.
Okay, let's try this again.
I think we're seeing a different tab. Make sure you just, I would choose the whole desktop to share and then you can navigate to the slides.
There we go.
Okay, we're there now?
We're at connections to This We Believe.
Okay, connections to This We Believe. And we talked a little bit about these, the attributes of what education for young adolescents must be. This, we believe, divides into three major areas: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And you see listed here the characteristics that we've identified in each of those areas. I'm not going to read them for you, but you can certainly refer to them and begin to see what are the links to what we know about SEL. Culture and community is the second area of this, we believe. And pay attention particularly to the idea that every student's academic and personal development is guided by an adult advocate. Culture and community, additionally, comprehensive counseling and support services meet the needs of young adolescents. And that really becomes a shared responsibility. It's not just on your counselors, it's really a total staff approach to things. The founders of the middle level movement, we've talked a lot about some names that you may hear. We thought it was important that perhaps you could put some faces to those names and their contributions to the initial publication of This We Believe. Bill Alexander, pictured here on the left, is considered to be the father of the middle school. He proposed the creation of middle schools in 1963 and actually conducted the first comprehensive study of middle schools in 1968. On the right is Pennsylvania's own Don Eichhorn. He was a pioneer in the implementation of developmentally responsive middle schools in Upper St. Clair, Pennsylvania. He worked with the principals of adolescents for instruction, group for instruction based on their developmental readiness. Okay, I'm getting an unstable message. I don't know whether you can still hear me. Al Arth carried the message of importance of developmentally responsive middle schools to a wide range of audiences since the beginning of the movement. He also developed one of the first doctoral middle-level programs, organized summer middle-level academies, and instituted numerous other special activities. Gordon Vars helped form the Midwest Middle School Association, which later became NMSA, now known as AMLE. He was its first president and was a leading proponent of core curriculum, a core-centered democratic approach to education. He was on the writing team for the first edition of This We Believe. Connie Teffer was a distinguished scholar, visionary educator, and longtime proponent of middle-level programs, practices, and schools that recognize and respect the rights and educational welfare of young adolescents. He was a staunch advocate for social justice, children's insights, and all aspects of authentic middle-level curriculum reform. And then John Lounsbury. John had a long and distinguished career, constantly committed to advocating on behalf of young adolescents and those who teach them. His leadership in middle-level education spans more than 60 years, with exemplary teaching, mentoring, leadership, writing, editing, research, and professional service. He has often been referred to as the conscience of middle-level education. And with that, I want to turn it over to Judy Brugge, who had worked with some of these individuals, specifically with Connie Teffer. Judy?
And John Lounsbury and Don Eichhorn and Al Arth.
You got them all.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is such an important topic for us, especially now in our crazy world. One of the things that all of these founders impressed upon us, I was lucky to be a student of Conrad's when the whole group was writing the initial This We Believe, and they kept harping on the idea that children at this age are in a struggle between who they've been and who they are and who they will become. And they don't know who they will become. So you probably noticed that there are some problems that start to arise between adults and the kids. The kids start gravitating more toward peers, and we hope that they find really good peer groups. So these founders said that one of our main goals, even before we worry about the academics, is to make sure that every child has an advocate in school for them, so that somebody reaches out to them if they're in need. A lot of their work was based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as Gail likes to say, it's Maslow before Bloom. So we worry first about the physiological safety, security, love, and belonging and esteem needs before the kids can become lifelong learners and want to use their potential. Added to that is self-efficacy, where we know that kids need to feel like that they can succeed. So one of the things that we want to do for them is to work with their social and emotional learning. So if we go to the next slide, you can read that definition yourself, and I'm sure you all know what the definition of this is. But I think it's important to realize that last sentence in there: even the brightest students will not succeed if their social and emotional needs are not met. And I'm sure you've seen that in a lot of kids, where they feel so out of place. So one of the things that I advocate that we do, and especially in this crazy world now, is when we first work with the kids to ask them, what do you want to learn? What are you concerned about? What do I need to know about you? So the kids need to know that you are interested in them as individuals, not as a group, and understanding that no one size fits all. They all have different needs. And I just want to share with you, a bunch of us were doing some research when we were grad assistants for some of these guys, and started to ask the kids, what do they want out of middle school education? Here's just a couple of examples. I want to do things I've never done before. I want to be someone else for a while. I want to find my own talents and abilities. I don't know what they are. I want to make things. I want to learn something new without worrying about a failing grade. I want to go outside to learn. I want to learn things that I can use in the future. I want to dance and play music, and I want to play and be part of a team. So those are some of the things that now, can you picture yourself asking your kids, whether it's virtually or in person, what do you hope to get out of that? And then responding to them so that they know they're being listened to. That's one of the most important pieces to this. This next slide, we're not going to open it up. When you get a chance, go back, please. Yeah, this is a little video that kind of introduces social emotional learning. We're not going to take time to open it up now. You can watch it at your convenience. But it's a nice little short introduction to social and emotional learning. Then I'm just going to wrap up what I'm saying with this research. Studies show that when students experience developmental relationships with their teachers, key social and emotional competencies such as motivation and responsible decision-making are strong, and risk behaviors become less common, even in the most challenged and unmotivated students. And I have to tell you, I found that myself because I had the privilege of asking for, when I was teaching, to work with the at-risk kids, although I chose to call them the kids at promise instead of the kids at risk, and got them to really try to open up. What can I do for you? I'm here for you, but then you have to be here for me. So it's a two-way street. So relationships before rigor. Love that word, rigor. The next word in the dictionary after rigor is rigor mortis, which is, pain upon death. So that's why the relationships have got to go before rigor. I say challenge. It's got to be self-challenge instead of rigor. Rigor applies something that happens to you, where self-challenge is something that you're working on yourself. Grace before grades, patience before programs, and love before lessons. So just working with them as individual understanding, they won't all respond to the same thing, and some will take a lot longer than others. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amber, who is a practitioner and will give you lots of good ideas. Amber?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is really exciting because for me, I haven't started back yet. I start tomorrow. So this is kind of getting me in that spirit. I just want to share really quickly before I kind of jump in something. I have a middle school son in 7th grade. And he said to me today, he said, it's been a really long time since we've been in school. And I had read somewhere, someone said that it was 176 days. And my son said, oh, that's a whole school year. So tomorrow, my students will have been out of school for an entire school year of their life. And so it's really important that we look at this as an opportunity to forge these relationships. They need us more than ever. I am a teacher. I teach 8th grade ELA. I'm the author of the Flexible SEL Classroom. I wrote it a few years ago, but it is more relevant than ever because now we have to be flexible in ways we probably couldn't have comprehended before. You can go on to the next slide, Gail. So this is the basis. If you don't know a lot about SEL, this is the basis. And there's so many information. One of my roles here is going to be to tell you some of the resources that you have. If you are starting out, this is where you go. It tells you it stands for the Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's basically the Bible for SEL. Most people have been doing what we say is SEL before it had a name, before it was a thing. It was just taking care of kids. And so when I first discovered what SEL was, I was excited that there was now like a name for this thing that I had been doing where I put the kid first. So the kiddos were first, and then we got to the content. And I've been successful as an English teacher with that as my mantra. And that's what CASEL really does. And they do have, I mean, it is a collaboration of all of those areas. If you kind of look at this, basically, these are sort of the tenets, the competencies that CASEL works on. And these are a little bit weighted in which ones are easier, which ones are harder. Even as adults, like self-awareness is a pretty tough one to get to sometimes. We a lot of times spend a lot of time with kids working on emotional management, how to handle setbacks, responsible decision-making, how do you actually, ask for a pencil without disrupting the entire class. So like some of those like decision-making things, but when we drill down, it has to be putting the students at the middle of this. So basically we're going to need to do some really social emotional temperature taking when kids get back to school. I believe 100% that they are going to struggle with the structure of school, having been out of the structure of school for so long. And so I think that that's one of the places where we're going to have to check on our kids. Gail, you can go ahead.
Okay.
So this is another video here, and this will, these are some really great, it's a CASEL video, and it really explains SEL. We're not going to play it for you because you can go back and look at it at a later time. But again, I wanted to make you aware of some of the resources that exist. Another resource that I have been weighing on very heavily, leaning on as I'm planning is if you just actually Google lessons for SEL, that is the group and that is what they do. They provide, and it's what I'm going to be using, they provide lessons that have a digital notebook with it. So you can download a digital notebook for each of your students. They can watch videos and respond in the digital notebook. So you have a record of their social emotional growth over weeks. And they start with short little topics, so like 2 minutes, with really, really great really great resources there too. But this is the CASEL video. Definitely come back to and watch it, particularly if you're new to social emotional learning. Yeah, you can go to the next one. So what I want to talk about and really stress the importance of is that we all have a lot on our plate, and SEL is not something that you add to your plate. It's who you are and how you respond to students. And so the one group that I'm very involved with is Share My Lesson. I blog for them, but I also have over 200 of my own lessons are uploaded onto Share My Lesson. It is searchable by standard, like state standards. You can search by standards, topics, grade bands, reading levels, and there's entire collections that are about social emotional learning. And one of the great things that they do is they curate materials very quickly. So when an event happens, within a day or two, there's a lesson that goes with the event. So they have a lot of those things. And what's really cool about Share My Lesson is that it's very easy and it's searchable. And for me, I like sharing my work with other people. So any of the lessons I have on there, you can download them for free. You can use them immediately. More than once, I have been like thrown some curveball and I go on to Share My Lesson, Google, it's Google, but like look through their search engine of what I need, find a lesson, and it's ready to go. They've all been vetted by teachers. So one of the things is that we've aligned them to standards. So this is kind of a plug for Share My Lesson, but honestly, it's a plug for like not reinventing the wheel. So being able to find the lessons quickly and the things to do are really important. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is, if you can go on the next slide, Gail, is just to share something that that's on Share My Lesson. It's also in my book. It is probably one of my more favorite things to do. I struggled, and I still do sometimes, about how do we handle the very serious things in our world in a developmentally appropriate way, not losing the content and not losing the seriousness of topics. And so one of the issues that I had been interested in was really getting students to understand what social justice meant. And understanding that. And so I struggled to find an actual source, a resource. And so I was actually watching Zootopia with my kids, and I kept thinking, like, that's really interesting. Did that just, that just hinted at this. If you haven't seen it, it's amazing for middle school. Because it really is sort of a narrative of what it is like to grow up in different places and have different people have biases against you based on where you're from, which area you're from, if you're female, if you're this species. So it really plays out very well. I encourage you, if you have a few weeks, feel free to use my complete resources. They're all in Share My Lesson. What it includes is, you need the movie yourself, but it includes a guide as you're watching the movie, like the start and stop times of, at 2 minutes and 26 seconds. And then it gives you the quote of what the character says. And then it gives you some talking points to help the children understand why that would be a racial comment. Why would that be, why would this be something that is biased? And so it really walks you through. And it's very detailed. So it takes about 4 days to go through the movie, really carefully, slowly stopping. But students then kind of put themselves in the shoes of the characters. But probably one of my favorite things about the movie is, in the end, and this is how I feel about like life right now, when there's so many things that are happening and you see so many bad things, what do you do? Like, how can you make a difference? What can you do? And Judy, the bunny at the end, she's like, you just have to try. And I like giving that message to the kids that this is overwhelming. They are dealing with things in the world that I'm 47 years old and I have never dealt with before. I don't know how to process those. So when we look at what we're placing in our kids' laps, this is where we are in the world. What can they do? Well, we can just try. And like, when you know better, do better, like that kind of attitude. So that resource is free for you to use. It's in my book in detail, but it's also in Share My Lesson. So I wanted to give you, from the teacher perspective, that this is not something that we have to recreate the wheel. It's not something that's brand new and its own units, its own lessons. It's a part of your curriculum. And so you can work that into your curriculum. All right, Gail, you can go on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
you.
Devin's going to talk about this from the administrator's perspective and what they've done at Springton Lake Middle School. Devin, all yours.
Thank you. So first I would like to say, Amber, you did an amazing job. And I totally agree. I think we have to kind of keep in mind, as everyone keeps saying, that there's a lot going on. And we have to remember, as adults, we're still trying to manage or trying to figure out how to navigate and manage this. And again, we're adults. So imagine what a 12, 13, potentially 14-year-old student feels. They've been out of school, as Amber said, basically for an entire school year. And then some are coming back hybrid, some are coming back virtually, and then also staff helping them navigate throughout this time. So I think personally, as a mom, as an administrator, an educator, we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. We're taking care of ourselves so that we can be what's best for our students. So I'm fortunate that I have an amazing team that I work with at Springton Lake, and our superintendent gave us the opportunity to plan over the summer for our SEL program. So over the summer, I had a great team of teachers. We met twice, and they were able to work independently. We met as a team and then worked independently on different lessons. And as Amber indicated, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. There were a lot of resources out there, and we just customized them to our school. We personalized them to our school. So we planned over the summer. We offered professional development for our staff at the beginning of the school year. So the team, we planned the lessons, and then we prepared a PowerPoint presentation for the staff to review. We had the lessons. We have committed 8 days, the first 8 days of school, for social emotional learning during our advisory period. And our advisory periods are 40 minutes every 7 days, but for the purpose of SEL, they're seven for the first 8 days. And advisories have no more than 13 students, and the students stay with their advisory teacher from 6th to 8th grade. And the teams are vertical, so we have a mixture of grades within our advisory groups. So that's advisory. The lessons are embedded within our advisory lessons for the first 8 days. And we offer professional development for the staff to kind of explain to them. The video that's at the beginning of this presentation about SEL is what we shared with our staff. And then we allowed them an opportunity to review the lessons. And then after they reviewed the lessons for about an hour and a half, just to kind of get a feel for them, then we returned back at the end of the PD session just to kind of work through an example of a lesson, give the staff an opportunity to ask questions to make sure that they felt comfortable implementing the lessons. And the purpose was not to add an additional layer or planning for the teachers. We wanted to give them information that was teacher created with the resources that are already out there. Ms. Gail, could you go to the next slide, please?
Sure can.
So as Amber kind of reviewed earlier, we use CASEL as our foundation, and we went over these 5 different areas of competencies. And we try to use kid-friendly language. So for self-awareness, we're asking our kids to basically check themselves. We discuss the ruler and the mood meter and being able to identify and recognize their own mood, what's going on with them. And then after that, we focused on strategies and identifying strategies that are appropriate to their personality and what fits them. And I was actually able to be present in the advisory session today. And it was interesting. Some students said they wanted to talk to someone. Some students said that they just wanted to, listen to music. Some students wanted to sleep. So helping them identify strategies that are useful in the classroom, identify strategies that are useful at home, because we want to give them skills to manage and acknowledge their emotions and feelings. Social awareness. We wanted our students, are you mindful of how your feelings are impacting others? Are you empathetic to others' feelings? Relationship skills. We're focusing on the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. And then responsible decision-making, being thoughtful and purposeful in your choices and how they impact you and others. So that was how we summed that up in kid-friendly language. And we're, again, embedding this within our 8 lessons. And then as we progress throughout the year, we have 7, we have advisory every 7 days. So then again, we'll use the same language, and then versus teacher saying, what's wrong with you? We'll say, can you explain to me how you're feeling? What is your body telling you? And then what strategies can you use, or what strategies from a toolkit can you use? Also from the fact so that's that piece. Go to the next slide, please.
Use this video to.
Okay, so the next thing is we discussed. Ms. Gail, could you go to the next slide, please?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think Ms. Judy discussed this earlier. As administrators, I personally believe our role is to model certain behavior. And I think if you talk to anyone from the staff at Springton Lake, we value relationships over anything, and connecting with staff, connecting with kids, connecting with community members. Because when you get to know people on a personal level, you receive a different type of support. And the theme this year from our supervisor and our principal and our leader, Dr. Saladino, is grace. We need to offer grace right now, because right now we don't know what next month is going to look like. Currently, we are in the fully virtual model, and we're using Zoom. And so that's how we integrate our lessons in. And we need to be patient and loving with our students as they adapt to this new normal in our school setting. As I indicated, we offer time. We gave teachers time to look at the lessons. And then after that, we offered them an opportunity to apply, practice, and then come back to ask questions. And as I indicated at the very beginning of my slide, self-care. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can be the best that we can possibly be for our students and for our family. And I know that every school environment is not the same. So if your school environment is not set up to where it's a building-wide initiative, I would say find out what you can do within your classroom. You can control your classroom environment. And as Amber indicated, there are a lot of resources out there. Some of the ones, I know a lot of people are using Nearpod right now. So Nearpod actually offers some SEL lessons, shared lessons, as Amber indicated. And I just ask that you guys be patient with yourself. I was looking at a couple of questions from the chat. How can someone address SEL in hybrid and online? And as I indicated, we're doing this during our advisory period, which is our 7th period of the day. And we have PowerPoints. Some teachers have integrated the lessons within their Nearpod. And some of it is just discussion. So it just depends. And then for the students, again, we're virtual. So the hybrid model, once we transition to that, we will still have advisory. And what we're going to end up doing is live streaming so that the students can still be engaged with those students that are virtual. So that's our plan as of today. I think I pass it on to Ms. Judy, correct? Or Dr. Judy?
Well, actually, it's
you, Ms. Gail.
going to come back to me to talk about some of the resources. But before we leave that discussion about SEL in the hybrid or the virtual environment, Amber, I know you had some experience with some of those things this summer as you conducted some summer school programs. Can you kind of talk about how you were able to incorporate some SEL pieces in what you were doing?
Yeah, over summer school, we one of the big things was the office hour. That was a big thing. We made sure our teachers had office hours where kids could just show up. That was a really big thing because kids don't always feel comfortable in a large setting. But in the small settings, having those like little opportunities to talk with teachers was a huge one, for sure.
Great. One of the things too, we wanted to make sure that you were aware of, and these slides will be available to you on the PAMLE website, but where are some of the resources? And Amber mentioned some of the books that she's written. These are wonderful resources with some very practical ideas and things that you can use. And they would be available in the AMLE bookstore, or certainly if you Google them, there are probably some other outlets as well that you can retrieve those books. This is another good one written by our own Dr. Judy Brugge in cooperation with Cheryl Bergman, Reducing the Risk and Increasing the Promise. That's available at Amazon. And then we listed some resources where there are some links here or some references to various websites. Please take a look at these things. One of the issues that we know people have is the fact that you are totally overwhelmed with everything that is going on at this point in time. And we're not trying to make it more difficult for you, but to look to ways that there are resources there that you can easily incorporate into what it is that you're doing. And that kind of brings me to a question that I would throw back to Devin. Devin, when you introduced this idea to your staff, did you get any pushback from staff members who kind of said, oh, yeah, wait a minute, I'm not a counselor, not my job, not doing that? Or did pretty much people, were they receptive to that?
I think because it was a district-wide initiative, our superintendent said, no question asked, this is what we're doing because it's what's best for kids, because they've been out of school since March. And to come in, and I think we said relationships over rigor, you know, if I asked you after giving birth or after having surgery, you need to get up and go to work, you're gonna think I'm crazy. I need to give you time to recover. I need to give you time to recoup and adjust. And I feel like our kids are living in the middle of a pandemic and have been out of school for a while. So we need to be fair and give them an opportunity. So we're fortunate. Our superintendent said this is a must. It was a non-negotiable. And we met K to 12 and we worked together as a team to develop these plans.
I'll jump in there too, Devin. I think it's really important to recognize what you said is these kids, many of them are coming from places of trauma during this entire experience. When you have been away from the adults that are like the caring adults in your life for this long, they have gone through life events unsupported and things in their families, their parents losing jobs, their, food insecurity, housing insecurity, all of the things that happen that during a regular school year, there are adults that are supporting those kids. They've gone through that alone without the school environment. And there's just gonna be a trust level of pulling them back in. I really love the fact that your district started with that because really next week I'm gonna be expected to kind of jump into content and, I'll make it work with the social emotional pieces as well. But giving them time and acknowledging that this has been people are recovering from trauma as we go through this.
And could I add as well that having worked with so many middle schools that do not have the luxury and even the necessity of having an advisory program, you can still do advisory. You don't need to have that. You can embed it in just about anything you can do. If you do something with exploratory, you know, here's our unit. What do you want to learn from this unit, and give the kids choices, so that not everybody's working on the same thing at the same time. In working just individually, having those individual times that Devin said, where, you know, a kid may not want to open up in front of everybody else, but if you have just a one-on-one with a child, or you know, with two friends or something, to talk about relationships, you can do it that way too. One of the resources that I didn't put on here, which I should have, is efficacy.com, which is the self-efficacy. And they have a wonderful phrase that I used to use with my kids. Smart isn't something you are. Smart is something that you get. So if you're not feeling real smart now, neither am I as your teacher. I'm going to self-disclose that I'm having these problems too. I'm unsure of where we're going. So if you are, you know, we're in this together, so let's work it out together. So it doesn't have to be perfect. The kids will make mistakes. The adults would make mistakes. And not, I said before, one size doesn't fit all. You do what you can with the kids, understanding that learning will not occur if they have social, emotional anxiety.
Continuing on with the list of resources too, one of the things you'll see there's a building relationships checklist during COVID-19. If you click on that, it will bring you a nice little resource with some things to take a look at. That are these things that we are doing. How can we address some of those things? So that is another great resource that's available to you. One of the things I see mentioned here, Danielle talked a little bit about zones of regulation. And Danielle, if Paul, could you unmute Danielle if she would be willing to kind of share with us a little bit about how that works?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you, Danielle.
Hi, so I teach 5th and 6th grade emotional and autistic support in the Seneca Valley School District in Western Pennsylvania. The Zones of Regulation is a curriculum that is in partnership with Social Thinking, which if you haven't gone on that website, they have a lot of great communication resources and things like that. But basically, it was created by an occupational therapist who was looking at a way to teach kids how to regulate all of their needs. And so the idea is that there are 4 zones, and they are all based on how you are feeling. So the green zone is when you're in the most control, and it's kind of shaped like a green light sign. Stop is when you are, you've lost control, and that could be something from anger just to being overly excited. Then you have your yellow zone, which is your caution, slow down, I'm starting to lose control. And then your blue zone, which is like moving slowly, you're tired, you're sick. And so the optimal state for learning is the green zone. So that's where we would really like kids to be ready to go. But the key thing about it is there are no good and bad zones, and you don't have to be in one zone at all times. I know that like when I've had an emotional day, whether it's strong positive feelings or strong negative feelings, that, you know, I can cycle through all of them in a matter of seconds. I mean, today was our 2nd day of school, and we're in a hybrid model, and I can tell you I started my day off in green, and by about 5 minutes in I was in yellow zone, and I, you know, had to use some of my strategies. And I apologize if you hear my daughter making noise. It was just it's a really great resource, and you can use it from kids who are younger all the way up, and there are great ways for you to modify that as well for children with more significant needs. So I highly recommend that curriculum. There are a lot of free resources. I don't recommend just kind of picking and choosing. I would definitely follow along with the book. It's online, it's great, and there's a website. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that with us. Mm-hmm. One of the things too that I think it's important for folks to understand is if you happen to be in a circumstance.
Ms. Gail, you muted yourself.
Oops, okay, there we go. Are we back?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I was saying is if you're in a situation where your entire school or your district is not doing a concerted SEL program, you can still do that in your own classroom. Look at what some of those things are. We know that these are things that are good for kids. So don't let that hold you back if you think, oh, well, it's not a school program and we're not authorized. It is what is good for kids. So if you can take some of the ideas that we've talked about and some other resources that you can go seek out, take a look at those things, find ways that you can incorporate them into your own classrooms. We
Gail,
also,
sorry, Gail. I was just going to jump in and say that that's such a huge point because I have the opposite experience. We just started advisory last year. I've been doing this stuff for years, and it is kind of lonely and when you start, but then other people see the results and they'll jump in with you. My team now does a lot more. My special ed partner and I are like now partners in crime. Like we work together on everything. And I put my website in the chat because you can see what's going on in my classroom. And for like every chapter of all of my books, there's extra resources, there's links to other articles. So there's other ways to see this because I know, at least for me, when I started off by myself doing this is like touchy feely. This is like being too nice sometimes. Like it's all these things. But when people see the results, and when you see your own results, when you realize like, you know what, I don't have to make these parent phone calls because I contacted families in the beginning. I started relationships in the beginning. So there's not surprises in the end. And so a lot of it really does have to be that trusting what's right for kids. And it doesn't have to be a program that someone else is telling you about. It's just funny, both the introductions in both my books, that's what it talks about is like, so if you're in a room by yourself wanting to like do SEL, this is kind of a place for that.
Ms. Gail, can I like join in or add
absolutely.
to
Pop up there, Devin.
So I think, and Amber, I think you probably want to answer Elizabeth's question in a second, but I would agree. That's part of my last point that I was trying to make. Sometimes we can't control outside of the classroom, but we can't control what's in our classroom setting. And to Amber's point, I know the difference between a teacher who has established relationships with kids and the parents do as well. And Amber, you can probably speak to this. If in the event that you have to call a parent knows that you've tried, you've built a relationship with their child, and then they're going to possibly question their child, like, walk me through what happened with Miss Chandler. Like, I'm trying to understand because she's never had to call me. I know she cares about you, and I know she wants what's best for you. And if a parent knows that and the student knows that, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, anytime you can, and I say that it's families, even more than parents too. I have a brother or sister I had 5 years ago who was in the high school telling their, 8th grade brother or sister, like, you better do what Miss Chandler says because she's going to make sure you're okay. She's going to follow through with you. And one of the things, and it's very time consuming up front. I live by this. I will contact every single family before October. I will email them, I will call them, I will send a postcard, I will do whatever I can to have some communication and positive. If I see somebody help somebody pick up their book, somebody's books, I'll call. And it's heartbreaking because I'll call parents and they're nervous and I'll tell them something good about their kid. And I've had parents cry to me and they said, I've never gotten a good call. And there was a guy a few years ago, his name was Rick Rowe. He was on Twitter. I happened to see he did this whole initiative of good calls home. So I started doing it then. And the whole initiative is basically like, and I don't always do calls. I'm an emailer. I can do it a lot quicker. But I'll do a postcard sometimes, but just letting parents know like, hey, I saw your kid do something great today. Or, I didn't really notice your kid's a great artist. I can't wait to get to know this part of your child. And so then when I do have to call, they know me as a human instead of a person who their child is an authority figure and they're afraid of. And I said this in my class last night. I teach a class for teachers. And I said, look, just know that not everybody's experience of school is good. So when like the teacher lady calls, they may have resistance to you. So you need to make sure that the school that you provide them is not the school that they necessarily had. You need to make it a welcoming place, make your classroom welcoming. That's probably the most devastating thing to me this year is not having visitors. I have visitors once a month in my classroom. Everybody's invited to come. And I'm just so sad to not have that this year. So we're going to live stream. We're going to do something to make it happen. But letting families know that the good that their kids are doing goes a long way towards those relationships.
Amber's point is really well taken in terms of make that first contact with parents positive. One of the teachers that I had in my building used to ask students to fill out a postcard addressed to their parents on the first day of school. And she kept them in her desk drawer. And when she saw a kid that did something good or that had made a significant improvement or contribution to the class, she could just easily whip out the postcard, write a few notes, drop it in the mail. There's something to be said for getting that little piece of written documentation. It's kind of like hanging the piece of artwork on the refrigerator. You know, here's that nice little positive note. And if there is that positive piece first, it makes it a little bit easier if and when you've got to make the call where the news that you have to deliver maybe isn't quite as welcoming. Elizabeth had a question here about, as a future middle school teacher, and congratulations to you, and we're glad to have you coming into the middle school. How do you get fellow teachers on board with following SEL? So I'm going to kind of throw out a two-part question that any of the panelists can perhaps respond to. One, are you aware, or do you know, is there any specific research out there that will show a link between the incorporation of SEL and academic achievement? And then secondly,
Yes.
any specific assessments that you're aware of to help you know whether or not students have mastered certain SEL competencies? So I'm just going to toss that out to all three of you, and anybody who can add to that, please go.
Well, I will say there is plenty of research to show that paying attention to SEL positively affects motivation, perseverance, academic achievement, feelings about self-worth, self-efficacy. So if you're really interested and need the research, I would be happy to provide you with some of the names of the researchers. Make sure that you do go to AMLE. They have a research committee, and they come out with some really outstanding research. Also, you'll notice in the resources, I've listed searchinstitute.org. It's search-institute.org. All of their information is based on longitudinal, very well respected research. And Gail, maybe now is a good time to click on to that checklist down at in the resources. There are two of them from Search Institute. And one of them is a checklist where you can actually go through and check things about, what have I done, which is a part of an assessment. And the other one is a checklist of things that I can do to work on relationships and SEL while we're working in a hybrid situation. So those resources are there to help you with that. And Elizabeth, also the whole idea of what if my fellow students aren't on board? I think both Devin and Amber said it, and I'll say it again. You do what you know is right, and kids will respond. I guarantee you they will respond. You'll have kids who all of a sudden will want to go to school instead of not wanting to go to school. And other teachers will see that because maybe they're leery about doing it. Maybe they think that it is too soft. That it's, I'm a science teacher. I'm not a counselor. Well, you can't teach them the science unless you work with the SEL needs first. So they'll see that. So you need to be confident enough to do your own thing, and other people will follow. I was in the first middle school in the state of New Jersey, and we had no idea what we were doing, but we knew that we had kids who were at risk, and as I say now, I call them kids at promise, and we started seeing to their needs, and all of a sudden these hardcore teachers, math teachers and science teachers who were all about the data and following the curriculum were saying, well, how did you reach Fred? I had Fred last year, and I couldn't even get him to want to come to school. And Fred's mother came in April. She said, I'm really ticked off because, I had to go and drag Fred off the bus because he's sick and he needed to come home, but he wanted to come to school. And this was a kid who his family, no one had graduated from high school. And, it's just so rewarding when you see that. You think, You know, if I can die having made a difference in one kid's life, I don't care what the teacher's doing next door. You know, it's just a meaningful, humane thing to do.
Can I add to that, Ms. Gail? I think for me, last year, teachers, you guys knew your students in March. So you had the power of that relationship. And back to what Amber said, it is essential. In my mind, it is paramount to take the first month, if possible, even if it's just 2 weeks, to establish solid relationships with your kids. Because it will go a long way. It's like with your biological kids. Put the work in early and the foundation in early, it'll pay off in the long run. So SEL helps build those relationships so that, as Dr. Judy said, it becomes easy to teach them the science. You'll get more buy-in, you'll get more support from your students.
They learn to trust you.
Absolutely.
I think that's you know, a real side benefit of this, that they're more willing to take some challenges and academic risks because they do trust you. And if you don't take that time to develop those relationships, you know, it's kind of like, if the horse is dead, dismount. You know, so often we try to beat things into the kids when we have to just say, okay, this isn't working, I need to back up. And maybe we need to go to square one and just talk about, why are you not responding? What can I do for you? Can I present this in a different way? Just having that human relationship is so important.
Ms. Judy, I had a professor tell me, and this was when I was going to school to be an administrator, and he said, you know, if you approach any problem that you come to with the question to the teacher or to the student, how can I help you in this situation? And that's just, if that's your go-to and you're looking at the worst situation and some kid was just in a fight and you say, how can I help you right now? Right. And it solves so many problems and it puts you in their corner. Even if they, I mean, obviously people have to have consequences for their actions, but if they know that you want to help them. And honestly, that's how I approach dealing with adults and kids. And sort of to speak to that question of how do we get other people to do this? It's example. Like people believe you when they see your results. And that's kind of what Judy was saying, is when they see like, wait, why is that kid doing anything for you? You know, I felt really good. I had an email from a student in summer school. I was the director. I never even saw one student. Like, I was at home behind a computer, but I reached out when kids were struggling and I asked that question, what can I do to help you? And this girl, I've never met her. She sent me an email the other day and she said, I can't figure out my schedule at the high school. And I just thought it was great that she like, okay, that was a lady that helped, so I'm going to email her. And that's, if they can have that impression of things. And I don't know who this girl is. I don't know what she looks like, but when I saw that she was struggling, I said, what can I do to help? And she remembered that. So that to me is like a really important thing.
One of the things that I've seen a lot of teachers do, and I've encouraged it, is if you're an English teacher well, and you don't even have to be an English teacher, any kind of teacher, to have the kids write poems about what it is to be a middle school kid. What do I need to learn from you? And it doesn't have to be rhyming. It doesn't have to be a wonderful piece of literature. But can I just read one really quickly to you? This is in a little booklet called Love Me When I'm Most Unlovable. This was written by an 8th grade student. Will you teach me how to sail through space upon a comet's tail? Will you teach me how to fly, to sail the skies on wings untried? Will you teach me how to soar, to see things never seen before? But most importantly of all, will you teach me how to fall? Will you teach me how to cry, to release feelings deep inside? Will you teach me how to laugh and travel off the beaten path? Will you teach me how to dream, to face the future sight unseen? Will you teach me how to be the only thing I can be, me? I think that says it all about reaching the kids.
And I think one of the things that's important for folks to remember is that oftentimes you go, oh, well, I have so many standards I have to cover. I have so much curriculum I have to cover. I can't take time to do these kinds of things. And I would suggest to you that the time that you invest in building relationships and incorporating SEL will pay off in dividends down the road of increased instructional time, because you're not going to be dealing with some of the disruption and disengagement and some of the things that you see in middle level students, because you have bought into them. You have paid attention to their needs. You focused on what is important to them. And as a result, they're going to trust you. You've established that bond, and you've seen some evidence that these folks have talked about from real life examples. So it does make a difference, and investing in the SEL up front will pay the dividends down below. We are unfortunately starting to run out of time, but let me just do just a few more things. One, if you've not had enough computer time, you might want to visit another webinar next week on the trifecta. And again, this is from search-institute.org that Judy's referenced a couple times, and please visit that particular site. Lots of good things. So we appreciate the fact that you have taken time from your schedules, and I know that you have been overwhelmed with the start of the school year. But at this point, let me turn it back over to Bruce Vosberg to wrap up this evening's presentation. So Bruce, take it away. Calling Bruce.
I'm coming. Here we go. Thank you so
Okay.
much. We're glad you all were here and joined us tonight. And I saw that comment that Julie Cook made about the American Sign Language. I think that's pretty cool in getting the students to communicate that way, especially in the age of wearing masks. So thank you, Julie, for sharing that. If you want to complete, you need to complete the evaluation in order to get your Act 48 credit. So that evaluation will be online, and please do that as early as you can. We'd love you to join our next webinar, which is going to be on Wednesday, October 14th at 7 o'clock. And the topic on that will be moral and ethical learning. And see the PAMLE website for more details on that, because we will be adding things as things happen. It is on the 14th. We have Judy Brew will again join us as our expert with the past histories of PAMLE and middle level in general. And Jen Court, who is a national speaker, she has done a number of webinars and blogs, and she's actually had to turn people away when she cuts it off at 500 participants in her sessions that she's done. She's an excellent speaker. She's from Maryland, and I think we can learn a lot from her, and we talk about this moral and ethical learning as we go through this. And of course, Dr. Judy Brew will join us, who's from Gettysburg, and she's worked with us at PAMLE for many, many years. I've known Judy for a long, long time, and we appreciate everything that she's done. We hope to see you all in October, and please share that with some of your colleagues. If you have any questions, please send a message to PAMLE. There's a link on the website where you can post questions, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. We also want to say that this has been recorded. We'll try to send this to you as soon as we can. And along with that recording, we will have our podcast, including all of the links. So we'll try to get that to you as soon as we can. I would like to bring.
And make sure that you look at some of those resources. Some of those are hot links, and there's some really valuable stuff there, in addition to all the good stuff Amber's written in her books. And so don't try to do it alone.
That's phenomenal, and I encourage you to do that. Absolutely. So with that, we'd love to thank you and again, thank you for being with us tonight. We hope you have a great start of your school year. If you haven't started, for some of you that have been going on for a long time, keep up that great work. You're doing great. For the reason the dodo went extinct. I hope you have a great night.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.